so much. Thanks so much, everyone. James, it's a pleasure to be here with you and to continue on with some of the conversations that Gugu was just alluding to there. There has been for quite some time, as you know, quite a bit of talk about reorienting the financial ecosystem to better adhere to the realities in different geographies. When we think about Africa and the development needs here, what progress have you witnessed in some of this reorienting that we need to see for development?
Yeah, it's true, Jennifer, that the financial system on the African continent has been going through transformation and change, reorientating itself to the realities. The first one is inclusion. I think that has been the biggest challenge. Banks asking, how do we get to ensure nobody is left behind, that financial access is relevant to everybody in the continent. And that has involved quite a lot of changing the business models, moving from high margin to low margin, high volume business models. We've also seen the African financial system embrace technology, and that is to be able to manage the cost because of shrinking margins. And the last one is interoperability. Banks initially had closed systems, and we are seeing a lot of collaboration and cooperation, and people are opening up systems. And the last one, the recent one, is the adoption of AI and algorithms so that we could be able to understand our customers better at the personal level other than segment level.
In what ways are you noticing that as the leader of or the CEO of a bank? How is AI and the uptick and adoption of that enhancing some of this this connection and cooperation that you're alluding to?
The biggest enhancement is on efficiencies, decision making. Most of jobs that used to be human-driven at the back office, those are essentially being automated using AI. The second one is productivity of staff. Using AI, the staff are becoming more and more, increasingly more productive than ever before. But it's the build-up of algorithms of decision-making, particularly in credit and credit scoring, so that the biggest impact is being felt because from data analysis, then you're able to get the clear picture of a customer, understand the customer, their needs much better than before.
When we look at this this theme and this topic for our session, bridging priorities, it doesn't matter where you look. Every private institution, public institution to a certain extent, has varying priorities. How do you see some of the innovation and the cooperation enhancing the priorities of the continent? Maybe we can start with East Africa because that's where you operate.
Yeah, we have seen the priorities of embracing technology as a big one. And particularly in dealing with cyber crime, we've seen that technology is helping a lot. AI is helping significantly. The second one that we have seen is that the East African banks start to become regional banks. We are now in cross-border business. We start seeing partnerships and collaborations are becoming more of a priority to be able to do. You go to a new market and you don't want to build your own infrastructure. You want to leverage on infrastructure that has already been built and share the cost. So ultimately that is bringing quite a lot of efficiencies. But in East Africa, the rush to embrace mobile banking, for instance, has really become a priority because the region has heavily been disrupted by the telecoms and the fintechs, particularly from transaction banking.
And there's more of an encouragement and a push for private sector engagement to fill a lot of those, at least, if we talk about infrastructure financing, fill a lot of those gaps. Is there still some work that needs to be done in order to better engage the private sector and tap into that capital in order to, again, accelerate some of the growth that we need to see?
Yeah, we have seen private sector starting to become significant in most of the markets. And as a result, then private sector becomes national go-to from government in complementing government, particularly in financing infrastructure. We are seeing particularly pension funds becoming huge players in infrastructure financing because they have appropriate funding. We're also seeing banks supporting infrastructure projects, directly investing in infrastructure projects. And lastly, we're also seeing quite a lot of private sector taking what traditionally was government-preserved development projects like power generation, power transmission, and increasingly now we are seeing toll roads and private-public partnerships becoming a common place project.
Is your expectation that that will continue throughout the continent? More tapping of private sector in order to fund some of these projects that maybe governments don't have the capacity to do so in this current environment?
Looking at the state of our economies, particularly GDP to debt ratio, looking at the amount of tax revenue that is going to debt payment, it means it appears this will accelerate more and more. Taking lessons from developed world, which I hope is the same path we'll go. We're seeing governments in developed worlds are more involved in policy setting, not in investment decisions. That is really the private sector preserve. So we think that will be the direction that African governments will go, and let the space be funded by the private sector, but brings in policy frameworks that enable that to happen.
What progress have you had in pushing for that, especially here as we convene for the B20 and the G20?
I think there is a significant debate around the world about private sector-led development financing. It was really a heavy subject in Seville conference in Spain, right. And I've seen it taking momentum, and it's being adopted by multilateral institutions, and essentially it is reaching the doors of governments. Is there a different way? And it's being embraced because governments are looking for alternatives, because they don't have headroom in terms of budget financing. So the private sector then becomes an alternative. But if we look at it historically, private sector have always funded government, but through a mechanism of treasury securities. But now it is, instead of buying treasury bonds, why don't you give the projects to the private sector? And they are funded as such. That is the direction that I'm seeing change, because the first one creates debt, right. The other one creates investments.
And in some way, it relinquishes control from the governments to a certain extent onto the private sector. But as you mentioned, maybe this is where government steps in on policy instead?
Yeah, of course, this means shrinking the stock of assets that the government has influence on. It shrinks our power in terms of that project. So there is like friction of readiness to hand over, particularly infrastructure. It has been a preserve of governments for many years. The capability, governments believe they have better planning, engineering capability. But the truth is, government always outsources that to the private sector to construct. So why don't you outsource the entire project from design, finance, operate? So it's doing it the same thing, but differently, and removing it off the balance sheet, right. Of the government.
And perhaps we see more development as a result, or at least quicker, expedited development.
I think what we will see more is competition, because now the private sector will be competing for those projects. So we will see more efficiency, maybe more cost effectiveness, better pricing for infrastructure because of competition.
Let's stick on competition and just continue to expand on the growth portion of our discussion. Equity Bank is the biggest bank in East Africa. You're expanding and you're looking at other markets. In the DRC is one that you've continued to grow in, but you're the second biggest bank in the DRC. Talk about your growth strategy and the progress that you've seen and maybe some of the challenges.
Equity Group Holdings has an aspiration of being a Pan-African bank. Their aspiration is to be in 15 countries by 2030. So there is quite a lot of coverage to be made. So we are exploring markets. But if you look at our financials for the third quarter, all the subsidiaries we have are now very profitable. You could say they are mature in terms of return. So it is time for us to pick the next generation of new investments and work on them for the next 5 years to 2030. So we are looking at using trade routes to follow trade like we did in DRC. And so that's what we are looking on. Of course, we are on record as having said we're exploring Ethiopia. We have had rep office for the last 6 years. And it's also persuading to go closer towards the south. So there are huge opportunities beyond Tanzania, which is our southmost country.
Is Ethiopia likely the next market we'll see Equity moving to, or what? Is there still some time off until you can?
The government has opened
License.
The license opportunity. We have presence there already as a rep office. The national expectation that is that the license will graduate to a full license. So we can say we have expressed interest by having that rep office there for the last 6 years.
And I know you've also been looking into the Gulf as well and expanding. If you think about Pan-African and you follow the trade, is it eventually getting to the Gulf? I mean, how are you thinking about some of these other corridors in terms of your growth strategy?
If you look, the corridor that we have exploited the most is the northern corridor that links Kenya, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, and Eastern DRC. The second biggest corridor we have is the DRC to the Indian Ocean that then goes through Tanzania, goes Mozambique, goes through Angola, particularly with the new investment on that corridor. So we see that as the next big thing because you are facilitating trade. And if you look, as you rightly said, the DRC has now become a $5 billion balance sheet. So that balance sheet shows that there is a lot of economic activities that needs to be facilitated across to the export ports.
So there's quite a bit of growth then we could still see from DRC, your presence in DRC in the near term.
If you look at that region entirely, it has become the fastest growing region in the world, averaging 6-7% GDP growth rate. So we are seeing a huge wave that is supporting trade. If you look at DRC contribution to strategic minerals, that gives us a huge headroom or a long runway in terms of trade opportunities. And so when we look at it and the construction of Lobito Corridor, the connection to the port of Dar es Salaam, and so you see that is where then the hugest opportunity will be. And we are hoping that Africa's time to industrialize is with us. And so you see that as an area that can lead Africa in industrialization because it's very rich in agricultural produce. So agro-processing could be a priority. It's very strong in mineral resources, so it can start adding value. And given that it's rapidly growing, it's a huge attraction to global capital.
I just want to finish on, again, on the innovation point. And we talked about pension funds and maybe more private capital or private sector tapping into development. Where do you see private credit and alternative assets potentially helping accelerate some of the development? Is that something that Equity is exploring?
I think the biggest innovation will be mobilizing domestic financing. And a good example has been the Grad Dam in Ethiopia that has been financed by citizens themselves. If you look at the pensions, it's the biggest fund that we have been able to generate in the African continent. Again, that is the citizens. So the question of innovation is the right product to attract our population to commit to funding. It's a question of returns. It's a question of governance in terms of investment opportunities so that you give people early successes. The IVRU pensions are huge funds, but they have been very reluctant to fund infrastructure in the past because the products were not really clear to them and the returns were not assured, but it's simply because most of the infrastructure was government-led. Now with the private sector coming, then most of them have experience, exposure, they're using best market practices, returns are known, so we are likely to see that. But that also, what it means is that it will also bring global capital into the markets, and that global market, it means then what we import is globally proven products that are tested and proven and could be able to then be picked and we learn with them.
And we are seeing that already, as you mentioned, with the Ethiopian GERD. We have to leave it there. Dr. James Mwangi, it's always nice to speak with you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you very much.